Jon Moxley is not my IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. Let's talk about it. What up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to a brand new episode of the Square Circle Podcast. I am your host, Marie Shadows, and on this episode, I will be reviewing Jon Moxley versus Tetsuya Naito at Windy City Riot, presented by New Japan Pro Wrestling. And then I will be looking at Tetsuya Naito versus Tsuji at Sakura Genesis, presented by New Japan Pro Wrestling. And I might end up getting into some of the AEW stuff, like the showing of CM Punk versus Jack Perry all the way back at Wembley and why the footage was aired. And I'll probably talk about the Will Ospreay promo because there was no need for him to get caught up in the drama online, because we all know there's a lot of people or bots or both that are highly obsessed with being online in a very unhealthy way, and they make it about them. They have an agenda and they push their selfishness onto others in the community, and then things get crazy and chaotic, and then people wonder why it is so bad to be a wrestling fan or just to be in the community because of how everyone else acts upon their selfishness, their ideas of that everything that someone says is an attack on their favorite person, when that is not the case. And they cannot separate or think about the bigger picture, but yet then want to have a front row seat to wanting to be in the business without wanting to be in the business, and wanting to pay dirt sheets to tell them how it is to be behind the scenes, when the dirt sheet people are never on the front lines in the industry. Hopefully I will remember to get to that part. But before we jump into me talking about Jon Moxley and how he is not my IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, I would like to remind everybody that I am going at my own pace here for creating episodes and live streaming and all the content creation that I've been doing for the past 4 to 5 years. The Square Circle Podcast started back in October of 2019. We are already over here in 2024 with 300 plus episodes. And I'm just taking my time, trying to fix everything, trying to make content quality and not so much of the quantity in a way, and doing it my way. I would also like to say that at the end of this podcast episode or during this podcast episode, please refer to the description down below to follow me over on my YouTube channel. It is currently taking off. I want to say thank you to the 254 subscribers that I have on my YouTube channel, the Square Circle Podcast. You can listen to all the back catalog of the Square Circle Podcast episodes at your own leisure. You can interact with the YouTube Shorts. I will be using YouTube Shorts a lot more than my TikTok. Eventually, my TikTok will go away because TikTok is just as toxic as anything else. And then also in the descriptions, there will be other links to where you can support me by buying the wrestling planner that I have. It is called Warm World Match, and it is for podcasters, content creators, even fans, to keep track of any type of traveling that they do for shows, writing down notes, coloring in the stars for their own 7-star matches that they love. Also, please make sure to tell a friend to tune into the Square Circle Podcast. The easiest way to get notifications directly to your inbox is to follow me on Spotify and to also follow me on YouTube so you never miss a notification for when I add a new podcast episode talking about professional wrestling. I do want to add more reactions, which I need to do that. And I want to add more content for you guys. And I want to grow my Discord and Reddit communities as well. If you are interested in joining me in any of those communities, the links will be down in the description. Just check the description for everything. And now let's get into why Jon Moxley is not my IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. I honestly want Jon Moxley to improve in professional wrestling. Now, you might think that is a crazy statement from me, but you need to remember that I am not just a fan. Like, I was a fan, then I worked for WWE, and then I work in the business. I do commentary from time to time. I interview wrestlers. I even review their matches on live stream. I have a hand in some part of the industry, and I love what I do. So the fan in me is not really there anymore. So I am an analyst. I've always been an analyst of professional wrestling because I see it differently from the fans who see it with blindfolds on and with a lot more emotion than anything else. That can be considered way too high emotional and very high energy. And you can't tell them anything different as to like, let's look at it logically rather than like, let's go on this roller coaster. Now, there are matches that have me being on that roller coaster where I am emotionally invested. Have we heard of the Bloodline storyline? That has gotten me on a nice emotional roller coaster. The same way that sometimes back in the day when the Elite was good at telling stories, I was on that emotional high too. And then also some Will Ospreay matches back in the day I was on that high. But for the most part, you have to remember that me, Marie Shadows, your host and the creator of the Square Circle podcast, is an analyst that will analyze the match, break it down like no other, and tell you exactly where to fix things, where to tweak things, why this didn't work, maybe that should have worked, and everything is off the top of my head. There is no scripts. It's basically me trying to remember trains of thought, trying to remember where to guide you guys, to give you guys a different perspective on professional wrestling. Every fan can have fun and should have fun when they watch their favorite wrestlers, when they're enjoying the match and they're there for the ride. However, if someone is breaking it down for you where it could have been a little bit better, that's not a personal attack on something that you like. You have to look at it with a bigger picture, bigger thought, and just see things from the top down rather than in a narrow little vision, tunnel vision, I should say, because that is your favorite of the favorite of the favorite wrestler and or match. So when I give reviews is to be analytical, way more than like fangirling or being a fanboy of professional wrestling. I'm here to make wrestling better than it was yesterday, whether you want to believe that or not for me. But my main mission is to make wrestling better than it was yesterday by just speaking my mind, how we can improve, where we should improve, and maybe try a little bit a different approach to how we formulate a professional wrestling match. Now, I'm going to go back to my original statement where I said that all I want is for Jon Moxley to improve. And it's kind of sad that if you are set up with a team around you, some friends around you, your friends are not telling you, hey, you should improve your matches. Hey, you should improve how you sell. Hey, you should improve how you talk on the mic. Because for some reason, his Shield buddies are far along than Jon Moxley. I know Jon Moxley wants to do the whole like tough guy thing and death matches and be like a Mick Foley, but there is a time and place for being like a Mick Foley. There's a time and place for death matches. There's a time and place to play the tough guy if you need to play the tough guy. By the way, if you're a real tough guy, you wouldn't have to play the tough guy. Most of the time, I don't get any feeling when I watch Jon Moxley. And when I say feeling, I mean like supporting or like getting hyped up. Like I really don't. I don't know what I'm missing. And I know no one can probably tell me in a very respectful way what I'm missing about Jon Moxley because it's not there. But when I think about the Shield, he was really good. There was something there where I was like, all right, cool. You know, I could just watch him, observe him. He wasn't my favorite person of the Shield. I really didn't have a favorite person. I followed Seth Rollins' career from Ring of Honor all the way to WWE. So like, you know, I've always been able to watch him, and Seth Rollins went above and beyond. Roman Reigns went above and beyond. and stuck it out through the darkest of darkest times that WWE had him do the most stupidest of shit ever. And look, he was champion. He ran the bloodline. He elevated other wrestlers. And then, unfortunately, his long championship reign ended at WrestleMania 40 against Cody Rhodes, the American Nightmare. And all of that is to say that these guys improved from when they had nothing. And Jon Moxley finally leaves WWE, goes on this crusade of having matches here, matches there with a bunch of wrestlers he's never going to fight again, that he's not going to have stories with, which I think is a waste of time. I think special attraction matches, like one-off matches against wrestlers that are on your bucket list, are very healthy for the business, are very healthy for your career. But if you made your indie career until AEW came along as I am going to fight the best of the best and nothing, and you're not going to stay in one company for maybe a couple months and then you're jumping around and coming back to that, to have like a story that lasts maybe 3 months, 6 months, then it's like, well, then you just went back to being an indie darling in a way, because there are a lot of promotions on the East Coast and like throughout America, and that's like once every month, and the stories don't necessarily connect. There's no continuity with the stories if you're doing shows once a month, because sometimes they don't keep up with that. And I know that because I've been to a lot of indie wrestling promotions, and sometimes I'm like, well, last month, didn't you guys have a story about such and such? And then now this month you're having a different story with such and such. And it's like, how are fans going to remember the stories? How are fans going to be consistent with their wrestler if the wrestler in the promotion is not as consistent for that story? You know, I think that's what completely turned me off from being a fan of Moxley, because sometimes when you leave the WWE, you have to go out there and make your mark and make people, the fans who are going to buy the tickets, the fans who are going to buy your merchandise, you have to make them believe that you can stand without the machine. And for those that support Jon Moxley, that's cool. This is just a general statement, observation about what truly happens when you leave the machine. Like, you have to stand on your own two legs. And yes, we can debate back and forth that Jon Moxley has been standing on his own two legs, but there is no continuity to what he does. There's no rhyme or reason to what he does. All he wants to do is go out there and fight, be this pretend tough guy, have these promos that don't make sense, and also bury the opponents. Like, you're not really supposed to bury the opponent in a promo. It's supposed to be like a give or take. You can bury your opponent in a promo, but it shouldn't just be blatant bury. Like his comments about House of Torture and how House of Torture is very uncool, and that Ren Narita is like an Undertaker lookalike with a cape. What? You know, I quickly went back to look at the hype video of Jon Moxley versus Naito that happened at Windy City Riot. And I was trying to look for something because I think I heard something different, but I guess I didn't at all. But I wanted to mention that when I talk about Jon Moxley's promo skills, in general, you're supposed to build a story. You're supposed to get people hyped. For some reason, Jon does this thing where, like, he's not... That energy that he has when he's fighting is not in these promos. And I think that it was a missed opportunity because he does put over Naito. He puts over Naito as being, like, the dangerous guy when you push him back into a corner. And there's a different Naito that comes out, and that's the Naito that Jon Moxley wants to fight. Now, since we know that Jon Moxley is a fighter and always fighting, he should have at least said something, maybe saying that both him and Naito are blood brothers, because Jon Moxley understands that if someone pushes Jon Moxley all the way to the corner to his absolute best, I would think that Jon Moxley will come back as a different type of person, a different type of animal, and unleash hell on their opponent, because whatever match he's in is very meaningful to him. But that does not happen in this promo package at all. That is why it is important to make sure that the promo skills are there. And not only are you talking about your opponent and how good they are, sometimes two wrestlers can have a common ground. In this case, Jon Moxley loves to bleed every single fucking match, which we'll get into. And Naito has bled in the past. So both of these guys understand the struggle, the frustration, the work ethic, and like really giving a show to the fans. And sometimes you have to leave your blood on the mat. So why can't Jon Moxley tell these stories in a video package to get people like myself, who is totally disinterested in Jon Moxley, to get reinterested in him and in his character? That is how you improve as a professional wrestler. So let's talk about this match of Jon Moxley versus Naito, which I would say right here that Naito versus Tsuji was way better than Naito versus Jon Moxley. Jon Moxley comes out, does his whole tough guy thing. Naito knows this. Naito has always played around with his opponents by taking his sweet time, because it's Naito. He wants you to be tranquilo. So, you should be, nice and calm and everything. For some reason, my brain didn't want to say the word again, but that's neither here nor there. So as they have this match, Naito gets into the mind of Moxley until Moxley takes the fight to the outside. And this is where Moxley is dangerous, but I usually reserve that phrase for people who are dangerous, like Gabe Kidd, he's dangerous. When Tama was in New Japan Pro Wrestling, guerrilla tactics, Bullet Club tactics. The point of using the outside to your advantage is very, very dangerous, and, is used by the best. Jon Moxley just does this so that way the fans can get more entertainment and they can be part of the action, and it's being a hardcore wrestler. I also do have a slight annoyance whenever Jon Moxley decides to give two double middle fingers to their opponent for absolutely no reason at all. And people may come for me and be like, oh, well, Stone Cold did the same thing. Stone Cold was believable as an ass kicker, as someone you did not want to mess with. Jon Moxley is not believable to be an ass kicker that you don't want to mess with. Like, I would not care. I would not feel intimidated. I'll feel intimidated by Stone Cold because I believe it, but I'm not going to feel intimidated by Jon Moxley at all. So him throwing the middle fingers every chance he gets, it's childish. Stop that. At one point, Moxley ends up putting Naito into the figure four leg lock. And it's a really weird thing that happens where I believe I caught that Naito had spit in the face of Moxley, and then I think Moxley might have applied more pressure to the figure four leg lock, and you hear a really weird scream from Naito, and I was like, what the hell did just happened? And then Moxley turns it over, breaks the submission to do a cloverleaf submission to work on Naito's back. Why did you have to transition into another move? Why didn't you chop him in the chest while you had him in the figure four leg lock? Like, if Naito's gonna spit at you, obviously that is disrespectful. Dear wrestlers, please stop spitting at each other. That's nasty, disrespectful. You don't want to catch anything. Stop spitting at each other in matches. And so, because Naito had spit in the face of Jon Moxley, Jon, you could have just fucking chopped him. So that way the fans could get into it. For some reason, like, the American crowd was not into this match onto certain beats in the story that they came alive, but it wasn't that Chicago energy, because Chicago has one of the best fans in professional wrestling. It's Philly, New York, Chicago, from what I remember. Maybe some other parts of the country, but Chicago, Philly, New York are the best crowds for wrestling. If Moxley would have chopped Naito in that moment during the figure four leg lock rather than switching it to a fucking clover leaf, it would have created a little bit more story in the match. Jon Moxley forgets that you have to tell a story in the match. Naito tells wonderful stories in the match with what he does. Moxley just cuts everything off when something gets going. Because when he had Naito in the clover leaf, he wasn't doing shit. This is why older wrestlers get annoyed at any match that they see and there's no action that the wrestlers are doing. They're not telling with their body a story. You know, he's just sitting there with the move and it's like, I can see right through this. Me as the fan, I am supposed to suspend my disbelief in a match and be like, Naito, don't give up. Don't tap, Naito. Moxley, you suck. How dare you put him in the clover leaf? Like, me as a fan, I'm supposed to be reacting that way. But damn, Moxley, you're just sitting there lightly, you know, just yelling over your shoulder or even talking over your shoulder about, you know, give up or tap or whatever the case may be, whatever he mouthed. It wasn't enough. There's not enough energy. And then most of the time, Moxie has this thing where he counts and he tries to remember the choreographed spots that are needed. And it's annoying because I could see it and I'm like, I'm not supposed to see it. The camera is not supposed to see it. There are ways to get around how not to expose what you're supposed to do next in this choreographed fight that you have told to your opponent. Hey, we're going to do this next. You know, just remember the cue. We're going to do it. There are ways to shield yourself from the camera and other people's cameras. You have to remember that today in 2024, social media is accessible to almost everybody in the world. And those that go to wrestling events will have their cameras out, meaning their smartphones and regular cameras, and they will record during the event because they can unless stated otherwise. And when they record, you have to know that not only are the big cameras on you for the company event, but also the smaller cameras, and you have to, you know, at least cover your face, at least like, you know, moan and groan a little bit, but don't be like Sasha Banks and moaning. We're not doing that. But like you have to use your body language to mask certain stuff so that way I could still be in the magic of what it means to have a professional wrestling match. So John takes me out of a lot of fucking things because he really does try to remember in the match what to do next and where to go next. There is no time for selling. His selling is bad. It is. Do not come at me for that. His selling is bad. Like, how do you get knocked down and then you're ready to get back up to do the next step in this sequence? Now in Japan, it's a little bit more smoother when they have to transition from one to the other, but sometimes I do see it, but it's not as much as like when you watch a Jon Moxley match. And again, this is all analytical. This is everything that I see. And the way to fix this is just to work on body language. Don't just go to the local wrestling school and be like, oh my God, let's work on the basics. Let me do this hammerlock. Let me try to get in some stuff. You know, work on body language, work on using your arms to shield your face and your eyes. Have a bunch of your friends be around ringside with their phone out so that way you know where to stand, how to position yourself, when to put your hand over your eyes or your arm over your head or something like that. So that way, when you are performing live and there are no do-overs or take 2, take 3, take 4, you know how to keep that magic alive in the ring. Let's talk about the bleeding spot because Jon Moxley loves to bleed in every single match. And that is very concerning for me because since we know Jon Moxley's history, we know that he went to AA to battle alcoholism, and that should have been the end of it. Not saying that he's back on alcohol or anything like that, but when you substitute one addiction for another, meaning blading, and constantly wanting to bleed in matches, you have a brand new addiction problem. And it's very concerning because it's like, that's not normal. Now, back in the day in wrestling, sure, we had hardcore matches, people were bleeding everywhere, it got everybody amped. But in 2024, with the knowledge that we know now, why is it a bad thing to bleed when it is necessary? If you are bleeding every single time you're out in a match, it does nothing for no one. And he can lie to himself and like say that he does it because it's for the fans, it's for the excitement, it's for the entertainment, it's all of this stuff. Like, stop bleeding in matches. It does not help your cause. It does not help your story. It does not help anything. And then I'm here really concerned that this is a problem and nobody wants to tell him it's a problem because everyone is like, yeah, let's go, woohoo. And it's like, guys, it's a problem. It is. It is substituting one addiction for the other. And that's very bad because you don't want an accident to actually happen during a match where if he does get cut open, that it could be worse than what was originally anticipated. The same way with David Arquette versus Nick Gage at GCW during a death match. And he thought he killed David because of the way that he used the glass or whatever it was to cut David. And it was just a little too much and a little too much blood was coming out. And now you might say, well, those are two different matches because one was a death match and this is Moxley showing whatever. Mental gymnastics, you want to tell me. It does not matter because it is still a bleeding spot. Now, I know that I am supposed to trust the professionals because they are professionally trained. They are professional wrestlers. But as we've seen throughout history, shit happens. Accidents happen. And I, as a long-time fan and supporter, all I want is for wrestlers to be safe. So I really don't think that bleeding in every match is going to help anything at all. So this is how it happens. Naito finally gets to be Naito, where he is dangerous and he is on the outside, because one of my other pet peeves in professional wrestling is when a wrestler just tosses the guy outside when they were just outside the ring. Like, it's annoying. It's not a battle royale, guys. Like, it just really bugs me that you couldn't think of a different sequence to have in the ring once you throw the guy back into the ring and then you're like, punch, punch. Oh, wait, no, let me just throw you outside the ring because I didn't know what else I wanted to plan there. Anyway, so Moxie throws Naito to the outside. Naito is just leaning on the apron. We don't know what he's doing at this moment. The camera is not on him. Then we see Jon Moxley fucking thinking and going back and forth as if like running the ropes, and then finally wanting to do a dive, but he gets caught with a chair from Naito. I was not expecting the chair shot. I'm surprised that that little piece of that match is not floating around Twitter, not floating around anywhere else, but that took me by surprise, and I reacted like, oh shit, he got hit with a chair. Like, I believe that because I wasn't expecting it. And Moxley is there, laid out, just hanging on the ropes. The referee does not call for the bell at this moment when you know that if someone uses a chair, they automatically get a DQ. Now, this match, the rules are the very basic rules of a wrestling match. And if someone did use a chair, it should be DQ. But sometimes, due to the referee's discretion in New Japan Pro Wrestling, they let a lot of those kind of rules relax. So Moxley is just there hanging onto the ropes. And here comes Naito to bring Moxley up to his feet before bringing him back down into a reverse neck breaker right on the hardest part of the ring, which is the ring apron. From there, we get a little scream from Moxley, and then he goes onto the floor. Naito just walks around because this guy is like, this motherfucker. That's the vibe that I get from Naito at this moment. And so the camera is on Jon Moxley. Jon Moxley is on his belly and goes underneath the ring apron. Now, first of all, dude, you just got dropped onto the apron, onto that steel beam, and you're still able to move and crawl on your belly rather than trying to go on your side to go get the blatant blade. And so back to the original position, while he's on his stomach crawling and he throws the ring apron over his head, the cameraman and the production crew realize what he's going to do in that very moment, and they quickly cut to where Naito is. They quickly move away because you don't want to give that away. But Jon Moxley is so fucking obvious because it is right where the entrance is. So that means that fans on both sides of the aisles of the ramp that comes down from the stage to the ring can see everything. That is revealing the magician hand, even though like 99% of us know and understand what blading is in the business by now. But still, it goes to my point that the magic is lost in this match. The magic is lost because of Jon Moxley wanting to be Jon Moxley and think that everything he's doing is right. When it's like, you need to think about it differently. You need to have a different perspective. You can't just go about, be right in the middle of everything and blade and come out with this blood. Which, by the way, it wouldn't even make sense for you to start bleeding when you just had a chair shot. There are ways where, depending on the angle of the chair shot, yes, you could get your head split open. But the way he got hit with it is similar to how Rhea Ripley got hit with the chair when Liv threw the chair at her this past Friday night SmackDown. If you are running into a chair headfirst into the biggest part of the chair, not even like the top part or even the legs, but like the seat of the chair, there is no way for you to get your head busted open. If the chair is at an angle, you have a percentage of getting your head busted open. But no, Moxley wants to just bleed because he got hit by a chair. Like, that would have started to bleed the moment that he got hit and stood there on the ropes. But no, he wanted to puncture his own fucking head. The logic bothers me because it doesn't make sense. And if you really want the fans to truly sympathize with you and be empathetic with you in your match as you're telling the story, you have to make things look real and have them believe that this chair that you got hit with definitely did bust you open, and have them believe that Naito wants to hurt you. And that's why he used the chair. Naito used the chair because that's a way for him to get an advantage, and the fans should not like that. If you're just there wanting to bleed for the sake of fucking bleeding, then no. And then, of course, commentary has to play it up, which I feel very sorry for that. Like, because it just doesn't make any sense for the hype to be there when, if someone is having blood loss, they shouldn't have a lot of grip. They shouldn't really know where they're at. They're disoriented. Yes, we could probably say sometimes that they got the fighting spirit of New Japan Pro Wrestling and it's the adrenaline. Yeah, we could say all of that. But you also have to be realistic too that Naito now has the advantage because you're bleeding. There was another segment in this match where Naito's at the corner and Naito is setting up to do maybe a spear or something of that nature. And Moxley is, have to play the part of being dizzy, don't know where his surrounding is, get up. And as soon as Naito is charging at Jon Moxley, how the fuck is Jon Moxley automatically doing a lariat to Naito? If you just got busted open and you just came back into the ring, how do you know that he's running after you if you just pretended like 2 seconds ago you didn't know your surroundings? How does that make sense? That does not make sense at all. The other thing too is that now I'm starting to realize that it doesn't make sense that if you are bleeding, How are you able to put a sleeper hold on somebody? Sleeper holds should not be effective if you are bleeding because you're not going to have enough strength. Your body is already in this mode of like, oh shit, you're bleeding. We got to do something, you know? So you have to play it up. You can't be Superman and still be like, yeah, I'm bleeding still because it's part of the story. It's part of the entertainment. It makes me look tough. No, it doesn't. There's the part in the match where they go back and forth and exchange forearms. And this is where the crowd gets into it, but not fully get into it. There's the part where they both kick out of each other's finishers. And then what really wraps it up is that Jon Moxley goes for his finisher again. And here comes Naito kicking out at 1. So that tells me that this guy has his second win, maybe his third win, and he has the adrenaline flowing through him and he's not going to give up because this championship title means a lot to him. The reason why he is champion is because this is supposed to be his last run in professional wrestling because eventually he is going to retire. That was his whole thing, that he wanted the championship title one more time before he retires because we know that he has his bad knees, some nagging injuries, and even some eye injuries as well. So his whole body needs to recover. So giving him the championship title at Wrestle Kingdom and then having him kick out at 1 out of Jon Moxley's finisher only for Jon Moxley to do it again and get the 1, 2, 3 is fucking bullshit. Makes no sense at all. How do you allow a guy like Naito, who has overwhelming experience, way more experience in wrestling than Jon Moxley, allow him to kick out at 1 and then the finisher is done again and then that's it? That's it. Well, it should have ended like 4 finishers ago. The reason why I don't like the fact that Moxley is champion and he's not my IWGP champion is because to me, and I've said this on social media and people don't like it and I don't care if you don't like it, you have to understand that it's an opinion and it's a perspective and just for you to have an open mind. It's okay to disagree with somebody and it's okay to agree to disagree. But to throw insults, it's not okay. But the reason why I don't like this is because it definitely feels like AEW and Tony Khan are actively trying to destroy New Japan Pro Wrestling. And I love New Japan Pro Wrestling with all of my heart. I also feel like Moxley has not put in enough work with New Japan Pro Wrestling to be considered worthy for that championship title. There are guys there. There are American, Canadian, there are foreigners there, which I really don't want to use the word like that, but you have to just follow me. There are guys there that put in the work. There are guys there that went through the dojo system and they fucking survived everything that Japan had thrown at them. And they are not getting the opportunities like how Moxley is getting. I don't care if Moxley was in WWE, went to AEW, have all these accolades and stuff. It's the principle of that you don't even go here. You may go here like once in a while, but you don't go here. You know, it's one of those things of like, how come David Finlay was not next in line to fight Naito after Tsuji did not get the job done? And by the way, Tsuji versus Naito was way better, way planned out. And it felt like this could be, if New Japan really wanted to drop the belt to somebody and build somebody, you drop it to Tsuji. Because Tsuji is fantastic. He is going to do great things. And he is one of my favorite wrestlers to watch. To drop it to Jon Moxley just tells me that this might be setting up for Forbidden Door and Tony Khan wanted it this way. So part of me is going to be blaming him because it seems like AEW always wins against whoever their partner is. There is no give or take. There is no sharing. There's no mutual respect there. They may say that there's mutual respect, but it doesn't look that way. It doesn't feel that way. It doesn't come off that way. Because how can Jon Moxley win a New Japan Pro Wrestling belt while still being contractual under AEW, yet Ishii is always showing up at AEW to fight on Collision, to fight on Rampage, not even on Dynamite, to fight on Collision and Rampage, two places where people don't really talk about that much. Why is Ishii always showing up and jobbing and losing to the AEW guys, especially Orange Cassidy, that in the logical world cannot beat Ishii? It does not make sense for someone of Orange Cassidy's stature cannot beat Ishii. Ishii is the Stone Pitbull for a reason. So this is why I don't like that Moxley is the IWGP champion, because it's like AEW is winning when AEW don't go there. But yet then New Japan guys lose when they go to AEW time after time after time. If a New Japan guy is not signed with AEW after their New Japan contract is run out, it's like, oh no, you're just here visiting, but you're going to lose. You're going to job, you know. And then that tells the American audience that New Japan Pro Wrestling ain't shit. That tells the American audience that the New Japan Pro Wrestler that came over, who is a fucking badass, is not really a badass, but our guys are badasses. It's bad for business. Now, Jon Moxley is going to defend that belt against Ren Narita come May 4th. Why do we have to wait like a month or so for him to defend that belt, for him to show up on New Japan Pro Wrestling programming? Why? Because he has to fulfill his AEW dates? No, you won the belt of another company. You go over there and start the tour, and then you work your way up and into this storyline with Ren Narita to make that belt mean something, to make the story mean something, and to make your win mean something, because you did not need the belt. You didn't. There would have been a better way to handle this situation if he would have lost and climbed the ladder in New Japan Pro Wrestling by being on a couple tours to get there. Because I feel that Naito got screwed because Tony Khan wanted one of his guys to have the belt. So that way, after the New Japan tours and we go into Forbidden Door, he's going in there as a New Japan champion by way of AEW. Like, what? Now, back in the day, I do know that during the territory days, if a wrestler wins another company's belt, that is their new champion and they will fight there. I get it. That might be another thing that they're trying to do over here in 2024. But again, you have to put in the work. You can't just be like, oh yeah, you know, I've been going here, when you really haven't. Let's think about this concept for a second. This concept is going to go like this. You have one person, and this person has two jobs, job B and job A. Job B was the first job that they got. They like it. It's awesome. And then all of a sudden they needed a second job. So they went to go get job A. But job A offers them so much more than what job B can give them. So that person, that worker, has significantly decrease their amount of hours in job B to go work more hours and get more benefits in job A. However, one of their friends, one of the workers' friends, tells that person through the grapevine that in job B, they're hosting an Employee of the Month competition. So that worker gets it into their head that if they go back to job B, they could get that accolade. And they do this. And within a half a month, maybe a month of showing up now, they end up getting Employee of the Month because the boss is like, you're doing a really good job. We're going to give it to you. Now, everybody that works in job B are upset because they've been there longer and they've been putting in more work and more hours and more value. That's how I look at it with Jon Moxley going over to New Japan Pro Wrestling. And because when I talk online about this, there's always somebody that has to be like, oh, he's been there. He's been there for years. I know he's been there for years. But has he really, really been there? Has he really decided to be on maybe a 6-month tour, maybe a year-long tour, so that way he could get the necessary credentials and proper storytelling like everybody else that puts in the work to go to New Japan Pro Wrestling? It shouldn't just be a one-off because New Japan has an event in the States and, you know, it's like, oh, let's just give it to you because of participation. You finally came through. And the only reason I'm a little frustrated is because you stopped Naito's dream. Naito could have dropped it to anybody else in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Naito could have dropped it to Tsuji, and then we could have seen what Tsuji would have done with it. If not Tsuji, give it to David Finlay. Let David Finlay start a story with Naito, which, by the way, let's dive into that for a quick second. So, New Japan Pro Wrestling released the cards, the match cards that's coming up for Dantaku, which is May 4th, I believe. And they have Bullet Club versus LIJ, which is something new. It's something fresh. But at the same time, I'm like, I feel like they don't know what to do right now because it just, I don't know. I'll probably over time I'll grow to like love it. But the thing is that you have David Finlay versus Naito at one point, as I saw for a match graphic. And it's like you could have built this up to where Naito is still the champion and David Finlay wants the one championship title that he hasn't got yet. He became the first ever global heavyweight champion that now Dolph Ziggler holds, and they completely dropped that. I don't understand why New Japan Pro Wrestling drops certain storylines that need to continue. And David Finlay going after Dolph Ziggler, Nick Nemeth, is one of the storylines that I want to see completed because it is not completed. And if we are changing focus to LIJ, it should have been David Finlay going after Naito for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship title. I would have accepted that. But no, you had to give it to Moxley because maybe Forbidden Door is coming through and all this other shit that I don't really know. But it just doesn't make any sense that you would put everybody on the roster who's been there on the back burner to make room for AEW stars that don't go to a promotion, that don't build the promotion. And David Finlay has built that promotion. The War Dogs have built that promotion. Alex Coughlin had to retire because of the cage match that they should have talked about it and make it more safer. And Alex Coughlin had to retire, and he gave his body, his sweat, his tears to building up New Japan Pro Wrestling. And you're telling me I'm supposed to accept Jon Moxley as champion? No, because it is very unfair. It really is. It's unfair to all the boys in New Japan Pro Wrestling, including the Japanese talent, the American talent, the Australian talent, the Canadian talent, like everybody who is speaking English, all of them. I really don't want to call them foreigners. I really don't. But all of them, you know, it's a slap in the face to them. It really is. There is a reason why TNA no longer works for AEW in a partnership, because they realized that it was a no-win situation. Tony Khan does not understand what it means to be in a partnership and how both companies should effectively benefit from each other, whether that is an AEW person holding a TNA championship title like we saw with Kenny Omega, or a TNA Impact star holding a AEW championship title and having like an invasion that's done. Most of the time, these stories and these ideas are half-cocked and they don't go all the way. Unlike WWE, where they do have instances of not going all the way with certain things, most of the time they see a lot of stories through, and then there's a lot of loose ends that also need to be tied up, and they use those loose ends to further other chapters, other layers in the world of storytelling, because professional wrestling is the purest form of theater. It is the purest form of everything that we love about professional wrestling. And professional wrestling includes the sports aspect and the entertainment aspect. Let me also mention this as well. I do not think that Jon Moxley is the best role model for Shota Umino. I do not understand how they got paired up. I don't understand how this works out. Shota Umino has his own different path. And whenever Jon Moxley is not there, and whenever Shota stops doing the Jon Moxley entrance, even though like it's working for him, but still, Shota Umino needs his own character. Now, when the entrance is done and Shota Umino is in a match, he is really good in a match. He's really nice. He's smooth in a match. However, I do think that he doesn't need to be using Will Ospreay's Hidden Blade, and I don't think he needs to be using the Death Rider finisher, the DDT that Moxley has. Like, no. Shota Umino needs to be his own person, and he has everything. He has all the potential in the world, and I see it. He's going to be very big, but he needs to believe in himself first and know who he is and channel that and become the person that New Japan Pro Wrestling wants him to become with his own spin on it, and become the next ace. Because the way that the fans and children receive Shota Umino, he's basically a rock star. He's the ace. That's what Tanahashi has. Tanahashi has that same connection with the fans. Shota Umino has the same connection that Tanahashi has with the fans. That the fans love him. He is a fan favorite. He is the huge baby face that New Japan Pro Wrestling needs right now. And I don't think by being under the tutelage of Jon Moxley that is going to help him in the long run. It's going to hurt him. Because now you have two conflicting wrestlers, or wrestling styles, I should say, in one body. Now, necessarily, I like wrestlers that have the full package, meaning that they can wrestle and adapt. They can tell a story inside and outside the ring. They could cut promos. They understand that less is more at times. And they understand that you might have to give a little bit more to get the end reward. Like, it's a lot of factors that go in for me to be like, this person has it all. Shota Umino has a good amount, or a decent amount, I should say, at this point in his career. He is very likable. He has a very squishy face that's very adorable. He's really, really adorable, and he has really good matches. Like I said, I don't think that teaming him up with Jon Moxley as the mentor is the way to go, because someone has suggested that the reason why Moxley is champion so that we could have a wholesome, feel-good story and have Shota Umino dethrone Moxley. And it's like, what? All right, we'll see how it plays out. But it's one of those, like, Moxley should not be near no one and training no one until he can retrain himself to be a better adaptable wrestler, rather than me having to see the same mistakes over and over and over again. That is how you evolve in this business, is by fixing the mistakes that you make in the ring. If I can easily see it, there are other people that can easily see it. There are accounts dedicated to looking at botches when they are truly botches. If they are not a true botch, it's not a botch. But true botches where I'm like, you guys are supposed to be professionals at this. Now, I get it. Accidents happen. Things don't always go right. It's professional wrestling. It's live. You can't do a double take. But you should be sparring with each other. You should be training with each other. You should be developing that chemistry with each other, especially if you guys have a wrestling school down the block or you have a wrestling ring in the backyard. Like, invite your wrestling friends to come over to train, to have matches. So that way, when it's time to perform, when the cameras are live and rolling, you have that picture perfect chemistry. And then fans will have a different type of reaction to you and your wrestling. Don't you want that? Don't you want the fans to, instead of talking shit about you or being negative towards you, it's in a positive light of like, oh my God, they improved so much. And that's because you take wrestling seriously. You go and train. And now people will probably tell me that Moxie trains and everybody trains, and I get that. But it still looks like shit. It still looks like the same stuff that happens. And I'm seeing the same mistakes over and over. And I've mentioned that before in past podcast episodes, but nothing seems to change. The Jon Moxley fan base out there doesn't seem to want him to improve at all. So I stopped talking about it. But now that he is the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, which he's not my champion again, I'm going to have to talk about him. I'm going to have to review his matches. And it's going to be the same mistakes that I talk about. Nothing has changed. Nothing has improved. And it seems like, I don't know. I don't know when he's going to improve. But to be bestowed a New Japan Pro Wrestling Championship title, which is part of the top two companies, because I'm putting AEW as number 3. It goes WWE, New Japan Pro Wrestling. I'm going to stick MOW in there and then AEW. And if they, meaning New Japan Pro Wrestling, if New Japan Pro Wrestling gives you the belt, that means that you did something right. But I think this is just a charity case to bring us into Forbidden Door for AEW, because truthfully, Jon Moxley is an AEW contracted wrestler that holds a New Japan Pro Wrestling Championship title. Again, Jon Moxley is not my IWGP champion, and I will wrap it up here so that way I can make another podcast episode talking about AEW and the release Jack Perry versus CM Punk footage from Wembley, and discuss a little bit about Will Ospreay's promo against Triple H, which, by the way, Triple H's comment was not an attack on Will Ospreay. It was not. And then also talk about WrestleMania 40. And I think those 3 topics will be good for another standalone podcast episode. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this episode of me talking about why Jon Moxley is not my IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, then please go tell a friend. Please share this out. And if you have any comments, you guys can leave it on YouTube, DMs, emails, even though it's probably going to be emotional. But if it's not, I will gladly have a conversation with you when I go live next, whether that's on twitch.tv/Marie_Shadows or youtube.com/Squared Circle Podcast or kick.com/Marie Shadows. All of those links and more links will be down in the description below, so please pay attention to that. Well then, you have been listening to an episode of the Squared Circle Podcast. I am your host, Marie Shadows, and I'll see you guys on the next one.